Hi guys, tonight we begin in a world that feels both vast and strangely quiet. A place where the air is colder, the nights are darker, and the rhythm of life is slower than anything you know today. You find yourself standing on a wide stretch of land shaped by ice and wind. With distant hills fading into a pale horizon, there are no cities, no roads, no distant hum of machines. Only the soft whisper of the wind and the faint crackle of something burning far away. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you feel like sharing, let me know where you are in the world and what time it is for you right now. Now, dim the lights. You take a slow breath, and the air feels different here. It is sharper, thinner, and carries the faint scent of earth and dry grass. Around you stretches a landscape that has not yet been shaped by farms or cities. A place where nature still moves entirely on its own terms. This is roughly 70,000 years ago, deep within the late Pleistocene, a period when much of the planet is cooler and less predictable than it is today. You shift your weight slightly, noticing the ground beneath your feet. It is uneven, scattered with small stones and patches of hardy vegetation that cling stubbornly to life. Nothing here feels abundant. Even the plants seem cautious, growing low and sparse, as if conserving their energy. And already, you begin to understand something important. The hardest part of being human here does not announce itself loudly. It settles in slowly, in the background of everything you experience. You feel it first as a quiet awareness. There is no safety net in this time. Early humans live as hunter-gatherers, moving through the land in small groups. A mainstream historical understanding tells us that these groups rarely stayed in one place for long. They followed food sources, seasonal changes, and the movements of animals. Survival depends on knowing when to move and where to go. You begin to walk, slowly, carefully. Each step feels deliberate, not out of fear exactly, but out of necessity. The land offers no clear paths. There are no signs to guide you, no familiar landmarks shaped by human hands. Instead, you rely on subtle clues, the direction of the wind, the shape of distant hills, the faint traces of animal tracks pressed into the soil. It is quiet, but not empty. Somewhere in the distance, you hear a low sound, perhaps an animal calling, or simply the wind shifting through a rocky outcrop. It is hard to tell, and that uncertainty lingers. Researchers continue to question how early humans interpreted these constant signals. Did they feel fear the same way you might now? Or was it something quieter, more constant, more woven into their daily awareness? You pause for a moment, letting the silence settle around you. And then you notice something else, the absence of ease. Today, if you feel tired, you might sit down in a comfortable chair. If you are hungry, food is rarely more than a few steps away. But here, even the simplest needs require effort, attention, and sometimes risk. You crouch slightly, brushing your fingers against the ground. The soil is dry in places, slightly damp in others, suggesting that water may be nearby, though not immediately visible. Finding water is never as simple as turning a tap. It requires observation, memory, and sometimes a bit of luck. A quirky historical detail is that some early humans may have learned to read the behavior of animals to locate water, birds circling at certain times of day, or the paths animals take at dawn and dusk can hint at hidden sources. It is not a precise system, but in a world like this, even small patterns matter. You stand again, looking out across the land. The sky is wide, stretching endlessly above you. Clouds drift slowly, casting faint shadows that move across the ground like silent waves. The light is softer than you might expect, filtered through a thin haze that gives everything a muted tone. There is a calmness here, but it is not the calmness of comfort. It is the calmness of a world that does not need you to survive. You begin to walk again, and as you do, you notice how your body responds. Your senses feel sharper. You pay attention to things you might normally ignore. The texture of the air, the faintest movement in the grass, the subtle change in temperature as a breeze passes by, and you might wonder, how long would it take to adjust to this way of living? Some historians suggest that early humans were deeply attuned to their environment, their survival depending on an almost constant awareness. Others argue that this sensitivity developed gradually, shaped over generations rather than within a single lifetime. Either way, the adjustment is not optional. You continue forward, and eventually, you begin to notice signs of others. At first, it is subtle, a faint marking on the ground, slightly different from the natural patterns around it. Then a small cluster of stones arranged in a way that feels intentional, though not obvious. These are not permanent structures, not buildings or shelters in the modern sense. They are traces, temporary signs of human presence. You move closer, and the air shifts slightly. There is a faint smell now. Smoke. It is light, almost easy to miss, but once you notice it, it becomes clearer. Somewhere nearby, there is fire. Fire, in this time, is not something taken for granted. It must be maintained carefully. Losing it can mean more than inconvenience. It can mean exposure to cold, inability to cook food, and a greater vulnerability during the night. You follow the scent slowly, your steps measured. As you approach, you begin to see a small group of figures gathered near a low flickering flame. Their movements are calm, practiced. No one wastes energy. Every action has a purpose. This is another quiet truth of this world. Energy matters without abundant food. Every movement must be considered. Running unnecessarily, carrying excess weight. Even staying awake too long can have consequences. You stop at a distance, observing. The firelight casts soft, shifting shadows across the ground. The warmth it provides is limited, reaching only a short distance before fading into the cool air. Still, within that small circle of light, there is something that feels almost like comfort. Almost. Scholars remain divided on how consistently early humans could create fire versus preserving it. Some evidence suggests that while controlled use of fire dates back hundreds of thousands of years, the ability to reliably start it on demand may have developed later. This uncertainty adds another layer to daily life. Fire is both essential and fragile. You feel the temperature difference as you step slightly closer. The warmth touches your skin, subtle but noticeable. It contrasts with the cool air behind you, creating a delicate balance that feels strangely reassuring. And yet, even here, within this small circle of light, the hardest part of being human does not disappear. It is still present, in the need to remain alert, in the awareness that this moment of warmth is temporary, in the understanding that tomorrow will require the same effort, the same attention, the same quiet resilience. You lower yourself carefully to the ground, feeling the firmness of the earth beneath you. It is not uncomfortable exactly, but it is not soft either. There are no cushions, no blankets beyond what can be fashioned from animal skins. The fire crackles softly, sending small sparks upward that fade quickly into the darkening sky. Around you, the group settles into a rhythm. Some sit quietly, others adjust small tools or pieces of material. No one speaks loudly. The night encourages a kind of quiet focus, and as the light begins to fade, you notice how quickly the world changes. The horizon darkens, the temperature drops. Sounds that were distant during the day seem closer now, though still indistinct. Night here is not just an absence of light. It is a shift in the entire atmosphere. You feel it settle in, and you begin to understand, in a quiet and steady way, that the hardest part of being human 70,000 years ago is not a single challenge. It is the constant presence of many small ones, hunger that returns each day, cold that never fully leaves, uncertainty that shapes every decision, and yet, within all of this, there is also something else, a quiet persistence, a steady, enduring awareness that you're still here, still moving, still adapting. The fire flickers beside you, its light soft and unsteady, and for now, in this brief moment, that is enough. You wake slowly, not because you feel rested, but because the light has changed. A pale glow spreads across the horizon, soft and cold. Replacing the deep darkness of the night, the fire beside you has faded to a bed of quiet embers, still warm but no longer strong enough to hold back the chill. The air feels sharper now. You notice it immediately as you breathe in. Your stomach tightens slightly, and this time it is not from the cold, it is hunger. At first, it feels like something small, a gentle pull, easy to ignore for a few moments. But as you sit up and look around, you realize that this feeling is not new. It was there yesterday. It will be there again tomorrow. This is one of the most constant experiences of human life at this time. A mainstream historical understanding shows that early humans often lived with limited and unpredictable food supplies. Meals were not guaranteed. Some days might bring success, while others offered very little. You press your hand lightly against your stomach, noticing the hollow sensation inside. It is not pain, not yet, but it is persistent. It does not fade simply because you want it to. Around you, the others begin to stir. Movements are slow and deliberate. No one rushes. Energy is not wasted on sudden action. Even standing up is done carefully, as if each motion is measured against the cost it carries. You notice how quiet everything feels. There is no casual conversation about what to eat, no sense of choice or preference. Food here is not about enjoyment, it is about survival. You rise to your feet, brushing away the dust and small bits of debris that have settled on your skin. The ground still holds some of the night's cold, and you can feel it through the thin layer beneath you. The group begins to move, not in a hurried way, but with a shared understanding. The day has begun, and with it, the search for food. You follow, stepping carefully across the uneven terrain. The light grows stronger, revealing more detail in the landscape. Small plants, scattered shrubs, and patches of dry grass stretch out before you. None of it looks particularly promising, and that is the challenge. Most of what surrounds you is not immediately useful. Finding something to eat requires knowledge, patience, and often a bit of luck. Researchers continue to question how early humans balanced their diets between plant gathering and hunting. Some evidence suggests that plant foods, such as roots, berries, and seeds, made up a large portion of daily intake. While hunting provided occasional but valuable sources of protein, you crouch beside a small cluster of plants, watching as one of the others carefully digs into the soil with a simple tool. It is a shaped piece of wood, worn smooth from repeated use. Slowly, they uncover a thick root, coated in dirt. It does not look appealing. It is rough, uneven, and covered in soil, but it is food. A quirky detail is that many of the plants early humans relied on would be considered unappetizing or even inedible by modern standards. Some required processing, such as soaking or cooking, to remove toxins or make them easier to digest. The knowledge of which plants were safe to eat was not instinctive. It had to be learned and remembered. You watch as the root is cleaned as best as possible, then set aside with others that have been collected. The process is slow. Each small success takes time, and still. The hunger remains. You continue moving, scanning the ground, trying to notice patterns, slight differences in the soil, areas where plants grow a little thicker, signs that might indicate something edible below the surface. It requires focus, and you might wonder, how exhausting is it to think this way all the time? Some historians suggest that this constant need for attention shaped the human mind in profound ways, encouraging problem-solving, memory, and cooperation. Others argue that while these abilities were important, the daily strain of survival limited how much energy could be devoted to anything beyond immediate needs. As you walk, the sun rises higher, though its warmth is still limited. The light reveals more of the landscape, but it also makes the distance seem greater. Everything stretches outward, offering possibilities but no guarantees. Eventually, the group pauses again. This time, the focus shifts. A few individuals move ahead, scanning the horizon with careful attention. Their posture changes slightly, more alert now. The quiet search for plants has given way to something else, hunting. You feel the tension in the air, subtle but noticeable. Hunting is different. It carries more risk, but also the possibility of greater reward. You lower your stance slightly. Following their lead, movements become slower, quieter. Each step is placed with care, avoiding loose stones or dry branches that might create sound. In the distance, you begin to see them, a small group of animals grazing, unaware of your presence. Your heartbeat feels a little stronger now, though the rest of your body remains still. This is not a guaranteed outcome. Far from it. A mainstream historical fact is that hunting success rates for early humans were often low. Many attempts ended in failure, costing valuable energy with no return. This made every decision during a hunt important. You watch as the group spreads out slightly, positioning themselves with quiet coordination. There is no spoken plan that you can hear, but the intention is clear. Each person understands their role, and then, slowly, they move. The moment stretches. Time feels different here, measured not in minutes, but in actions and reactions. The animals lift their heads, sensing something, a sudden shift, movement. The chase begins, brief but intense. Dust rises beneath your feet as you follow, your breath steady but controlled. Every step matters, and then, just as quickly as it begins, it ends. The animals scatter, faster than expected, disappearing into the distance. Silence returns. No success. You stand still, your chest rising and falling, feeling the weight of the moment, the energy spent, the effort made, and yet nothing gained. This is part of the pattern. Failure is not unusual, it is expected. Scholars remain divided on how early humans coped with repeated hunting failures. Some suggest that social bonds helped distribute resources when one individual succeeded. Others believe that the uncertainty itself shaped behaviors, encouraging flexibility and adaptability. You turn back with the group, the quiet understanding shared without words. The roots gathered earlier now feel more important, small as they are. They represent something certain, something real. By the time you return to the place where the fire once burned, the sun is higher, but your hunger has not faded. If anything, it feels more present now. You sit again, watching as the collected food is prepared. There is no abundance here. Each piece is handled carefully, divided with attention. Nothing is wasted. You take a portion, holding it briefly before eating. The taste is simple, earthy, not particularly pleasant, but it eases the sharp edge of hunger, at least for now, and that is enough. You notice how quickly your body accepts this. There is no expectation of fullness, no desire for more than what is available. The goal is not satisfaction, it is continuation. As you sit there, the light steady around you, you begin to understand something deeper. The hardest part is not just hunger itself, it is the constancy of it. The way it shapes every decision, the way it never fully disappears, even in this moment, as you eat. You know it will return, later today, tomorrow, again and again. You glance at the others, noticing their calm, steady movements. There is no frustration, no visible disappointment. This is simply how life is, and perhaps that is the most difficult part to imagine, living in a world where uncertainty is not an exception, but the norm. You finish what little you have, brushing your hands lightly. The day continues, the search will begin again, and you, like the others, will keep moving, because there is no alternative. You notice the cold again before you even fully open your eyes. It settles into your body quietly, not as a sudden shock, but as a steady presence that never truly left during the night. The faint warmth from the embers has faded, and the air around you feels still and sharp. For a moment, you remain where you are, curled slightly against the ground, aware of the contrast between your own body heat and the chill pressing in from every direction. There is no thick barrier between you and the environment, only simple coverings, animal skins that help, but do not completely protect. You slowly sit up, and the movement brings a new wave of sensation. The cold is not just something you feel on your skin, it reaches deeper into your muscles, making each motion feel a little slower, a little heavier. This is the reality of living in the late Pleistocene. A mainstream historical understanding tells us that global temperatures during this period were often cooler, with large ice sheets covering parts of the northern continents. Even in regions without permanent ice, the climate could shift quickly, bringing cold winds and sudden drops in temperature. You draw your covering closer, adjusting it carefully. It is not tailored or layered in the way modern clothing would be. It is simple, shaped by necessity rather than comfort. The texture is uneven, the edges rough, but it holds some warmth, and that matters. Around you, others are beginning to stir, their movements slow and deliberate, just as before. No one rushes into the cold. There is a shared understanding that the body needs time to adjust. You stand, and the ground beneath your feet feels colder than it did the day before. The soil holds the memory of the night. Releasing it slowly into the air, a light breeze passes, and you feel it immediately, slipping through the small gaps in your covering. It carries no scent of warmth, only the faint dryness of the open land, and you begin to understand that cold is not just a condition here, it is a constant challenge. Researchers continue to question how early humans adapted to such conditions across different regions. Some evidence suggests the use of layered animal skins, possibly sewn together with simple tools, while other findings indicate that fire and shelter played an equally critical role in maintaining body heat. You glance toward the remains of the fire. The embers are still there, faintly glowing, but they are not enough on their own. Someone moves closer, carefully adding small pieces of dry material, coaxing the flame back to life. The process is patient. There is no rushing it. A quirky detail is that maintaining fire may have required near constant attention. Early humans likely carried embers with them when they moved, preserving the flame rather than recreating it from scratch each time. Losing fire could mean facing the cold without one of the few reliable sources of warmth. You step closer as the fire begins to grow again, its light flickering softly. The warmth reaches you slowly, spreading across your skin in a way that feels almost immediate. Even though it is subtle, you hold your hands near it, not too close. just enough to feel the difference. It is a small comfort, but it does not extend far. Beyond the circle of light, the cold remains unchanged. You look outward, across the landscape, and notice how the environment itself seems shaped by this constant chill. The vegetation is low, sparse. Trees, where they exist, are scattered and resilient, their forms shaped by wind and temperature. There is no lush abundance here, only survival. You begin to move again, this time more aware of how your body responds to the cold. Your steps are measured, not only to conserve energy, but to maintain warmth. Movement helps, but it also consumes energy, creating a balance that must be carefully managed. And you might wonder, how did people endure this day after day? Some historians suggest that early humans developed a remarkable tolerance for cold through gradual adaptation, both physically and behaviorally. Others argue that their survival depended more on ingenuity than endurance, using fire, shelter, and group cooperation to mitigate the effects of low temperatures. You continue walking, following the group as they move toward a rocky area in the distance. The terrain shifts slightly here, offering more variation in the land, larger stones, uneven ground, and shallow rises create spaces that feel more sheltered than the open plains. You step into one of these areas and immediately notice the difference. The wind is weaker here, the air feels slightly more stable. It is not warm, but it is less harsh. This is the kind of place that offers some protection, even if only temporary. Natural formations like rock overhangs or shallow caves can provide a barrier against wind and cold, making them valuable locations for rest or shelter. A mainstream historical fact is that early humans often used caves and rock shelters when available, not as permanent homes, but as practical refuges. These spaces could retain heat more effectively and offer protection from the elements. You move closer to the stone surface, placing your hand against it. It feels cool, but not as cold as the open air. The rock holds temperature differently, absorbing and releasing heat slowly. Some of the group begin to settle here, arranging simple materials, preparing a place where the fire can be maintained more effectively. The positioning matters. Too close to the opening, and the wind will weaken the flame. Too deep inside, and smoke becomes a problem. Every detail requires attention. Scholars remain divided on how complex early shelter construction was at this time. While some evidence points to simple structures made from branches and hides, others suggest that natural shelters were often preferred due to their reliability. You sit near the edge of the space, where you can feel both the warmth of the fire and the cool air beyond. The contrast is constant, reminding you of how thin the boundary is between comfort and discomfort. As the fire grows stronger, the atmosphere changes slightly. The light flickers across the stone walls, creating shifting patterns that feel almost alive. The warmth spreads slowly, reaching a bit further than before. You notice how everyone positions themselves carefully, maximizing the benefit of the heat. There is no randomness here. Each person understands where to sit, how to angle their body, how to use the available resources. This is knowledge shaped by necessity. You adjust your covering again, pulling it tighter around your shoulders. The material is not perfect, but it works well enough when combined with the heat from the fire. And still, the cold is never entirely gone. It lingers at the edges, in the air you breathe, in the ground beneath you, in the quiet moments when the fire weakens. You begin to understand that warmth here is not a constant state. It is something you create, maintain, and protect. You glance toward the entrance of the shelter, watching as the light shifts slightly. The day continues, but the temperature does not rise significantly. The sun, while present, offers limited relief. This is another subtle challenge. day does not guarantee warmth. And as the hours pass, you notice how your body adjusts in small ways. Your movements become more efficient. You waste less energy. You learn to stay within the range of warmth when possible, stepping out only when necessary. This balance becomes part of your awareness, just like hunger, just like the need for water. Everything is connected. You sit quietly for a moment, listening to the soft crackle of the fire. The sound is steady, almost soothing. It fills the space, masking the deeper silence beyond, and in that moment, you realize something. The hardest part of the cold is not just the physical discomfort, it is the constant management, the need to always be aware, to adjust, to maintain, to respond. There is no moment where you can forget it entirely. Even now, as you sit in relative warmth, you know that the fire will need tending, that the night will return, that the cold will press in again. You rest your hands near the flame, feeling the heat spread slowly into your fingers. It is enough, for now, but only for now. You notice the darkness long before it fully arrives. It begins as a soft dimming at the edges of the land, a quiet fading of colour as the sun lowers itself behind the distant hills. The light does not disappear all at once. Instead, it withdraws slowly, leaving behind long shadows that stretch across the ground. You sit near the fire, watching as the world shifts around you. The air cools again, not suddenly, but with a steady certainty that feels familiar now. The warmth from the day was limited, and whatever small comfort it offered is already slipping away. Night here is not just a change in lighting. It is a transformation of the entire environment. A mainstream historical understanding suggests that for early humans, nighttime posed a significant set of challenges without artificial lighting. Visibility dropped sharply, increasing vulnerability to predators and making movement far more dangerous. You glance outward, beyond the reach of the firelight. The landscape that felt open and readable during the day now becomes uncertain, its details blending into a soft, indistinct darkness. Shapes are harder to recognize. Distances feel unclear. Even familiar ground seems different. You shift slightly, adjusting your position closer to the fire. The warmth feels more important now, not just for comfort, but for reassurance. The light flickers steadily, creating a small circle where things still feel known. Outside that circle, the unknown begins. A faint sound reaches you. It is distant, low, and difficult to identify. Perhaps an animal moving across the land, perhaps something else entirely. The problem is not the sound itself, it is the uncertainty of it. Researchers continue to question how early humans interpreted nighttime sounds and signals. Without the benefit of clear vision, hearing and memory likely played a much larger role in assessing potential danger. You listen carefully, your attention drawn outward. Every small noise seems more noticeable now. The shifting of the wind, the faint rustle of grass, the occasional crack of something unseen. Each sound carries possibility, and you might wonder, how did people ever relax in a world like this? Some historians suggest that early humans developed a kind of shared vigilance, where groups remained loosely alert even while resting. Others argue that exhaustion eventually overcame fear, allowing sleep to come despite the risks. You glance around at the others. Their movements are slower now, quieter. Some remain awake, tending to the fire or simply watching the darkness beyond. Others have settled closer to the warmth, their bodies still but not entirely relaxed. There is no complete sense of safety here, only a careful balance. A quirky detail is that the use of fire at night may have served multiple purposes beyond warmth and cooking. The light itself could deter certain animals, while the smoke and scent might signal human presence, creating a small protective boundary. You add a small piece of dry material to the fire, watching as it catches slowly. The flame responds with a soft increase in brightness, pushing the darkness back just a little further, but it never fully retreats. You notice how the fire becomes the center of everything now. It draws the group inward, shaping where you sit, how you move, even how you think. Without it, the night would feel much larger, much closer. You stretch your hands toward the warmth, feeling the heat spread across your skin. It is a simple act, but it brings a sense of grounding. Still, your awareness does not fade. Your eyes continue to drift toward the edges of the light. Your ears remain tuned to the quiet sounds beyond. This is the rhythm of nighttime. You cannot fully rest, not completely. Scholars remain divided on how sleep patterns functioned in early human groups. Some suggest segmented sleep, where individuals woke periodically throughout the night, maintaining awareness of their surroundings. Others believe that sleep was lighter overall, shaped by the need to remain alert. You shift your position slightly, settling into the ground. The surface is firm, uneven in places, but you have already begun to adapt to it. Comfort here is relative. You lie back carefully, keeping your head angled toward the fire. The light flickers above you, casting moving shadows that dance across your vision. For a moment, you close your eyes, and immediately, the other senses become stronger. You hear the fire more clearly now, the soft crackling and occasional pop as small pieces shift and settle. You feel the temperature differences across your body, the warmth on one side, the cooler air on the other. And beneath it all, there is a steady awareness. You're not alone, not just because of the group around you, but because of the world beyond. Something moves in the distance. You open your eyes again, scanning the edge of the firelight for a brief moment. You think you see a shape, something low and shifting just beyond visibility. Then it is gone. Perhaps it was nothing, or perhaps it was something that chose not to come closer. A mainstream historical fact is that early humans shared their environment with a wide range of predators, including large cats, hyenas, and other carnivores. These animals were often more active at night, increasing the sense of vulnerability after dark. You sit up slightly, your body responding before your mind fully processes the thought. The others remain calm, but attentive. No one reacts with panic. This is not a rare occurrence. It is part of the night. You wait, listening. The sound does not return. Gradually, the tension eases, though it never fully disappears. This is another quiet truth. Relief is temporary. You settle back again, your body slowly relaxing, and as the minutes pass, you begin to feel the pull of sleep once more. It comes gently, not as a deep wave, but as a gradual softening of awareness. Your eyes close again. The fire continues to burn beside you. The sounds of the night continue, distant and indistinct. And somewhere within all of this, you drift between rest and alertness, never fully surrendering to either. You might find yourself wondering how long nights like this last, without clocks or artificial light. Time feels different. It stretches and contracts, measured not in numbers, but in sensations. The cooling of the air, the movement of stars overhead, the slow fading and rebuilding of the fire. Eventually, you begin to notice a subtle change. The darkness is no longer deepening. It is softening. A faint light begins to return at the horizon, barely visible at first, but enough to signal that the night is ending. You open your eyes once more, watching as the world slowly becomes visible again. The shapes return. The distance becomes clearer. The tension shifts. Morning is coming, and with it, a different set of challenges. You sit up, feeling the stiffness in your body, the lingering cold, the quiet hunger that has not gone away. The fire is still there, though weaker now, its light less necessary as the sky brightens. You take a slow breath, noticing how the air feels slightly different, carrying the promise of another day, but also the certainty of its demands. And as you look out across the land, now slowly revealed again, you understand something with quiet clarity. The hardest part of the night is not just the darkness, it is the constant awareness that you must carry through it. The knowledge that rest is never complete, that safety is never absolute, that even in stillness, you must remain connected to the world around you. You rise slowly, preparing to move again, because the night may be ending. But the effort never does. You notice the fire first, not because it is bright, but because it is weaker than it should be. The embers glow softly, their light low and uneven, as if they are slowly giving up the energy they held through the night. A thin thread of smoke rises into the cool morning air, drifting without urgency. You move closer, crouching beside it, feeling the faint warmth that still lingers. It is not enough on its own, not anymore, and immediately. You understand something important. Fire is not permanent. It never was. A mainstream historical understanding shows that while early humans had controlled the use of fire for many thousands of years, maintaining it was often more reliable than creating it from nothing. The skill of starting fire consistently may not have been universal across all groups at this time. You reach toward the embers, gently adjusting a small piece of charred material. It shifts slightly, releasing a brief glow, then dims again. Around you, others are already aware. Their movements are quiet but purposeful. Someone gathers dry grass. Another searches for small twigs, light enough to catch quickly. There is no panic, but there is urgency. You place a thin piece of material near the ember, watching carefully. The flame does not return immediately. It takes time, patience. The air feels still, as if even the wind is waiting, and then, slowly, a faint flicker appears. It is small, fragile, easy to lose. You lean closer, careful not to disturb it. A slight breath, controlled and gentle, encourages the flame. It grows just enough to catch the next piece. This is how fire lives here, not as something guaranteed, but as something constantly protected. A quirky historical detail is that some early human groups may have carried smouldering materials with them during travel, such as slow-burning wood or plant matter, to preserve fire over long distances. This suggests that losing a flame could be a serious setback. You sit back slightly as the fire strengthens, its light becoming more stable. The warmth returns in a slow, spreading way, reaching outward in a small circle. It feels like relief, but only briefly. Because even as the flame grows, you realize that it will need attention again, later today, tonight, tomorrow. It never ends. You hold your hands near the heat, feeling the difference in your skin. The cold retreats slightly, replaced by a gentle warmth that settles into your fingers. It is enough to make movement easier, enough to think clearly, but not enough to forget. You glance at the others, noticing how naturally they move through this process. No one explains it. No one hesitates. The knowledge is shared, practiced, embedded in daily life. Researchers continue to question how knowledge like this was passed between early humans. Without written language, skills such as fire maintenance, tool use, and food preparation relied entirely on observation and memory. You watch as one person arranges the fuel more carefully, creating a structure that allows air to move through it. The flame responds, growing a little stronger. It is a small detail, but it matters. Everything here depends on small details. You sit quietly, letting the warmth reach you fully now. The fire crackles softly, its sound steady and almost calming. It fills the space with a sense of presence, something that pushes back against the emptiness beyond. And you might wonder, how much did early humans depend on fire beyond warmth? Some historians suggest that fire played a central role in shaping human life, not only for heat and cooking, but also for protection, social interaction, and even the development of communication. Others argue that, while important, it was just one of many tools in a broader system of survival. You shift slightly, picking up a small piece of food from the previous day. It has been kept close to the fire, perhaps to preserve it or make it easier to eat. You bring it closer, noticing the change in texture. Cooked food is softer, easier to consume, requiring less effort from your body. A mainstream historical fact is that the use of fire for cooking may have significantly impacted human evolution, allowing for better digestion and increased energy intake. This could have supported brain development over long periods of time. You take a small bite. The taste simple but slightly improved by the heat. It is not a meal in the way you might think of one now. It is sustenance, and it is limited. You finish it slowly, aware that there is not much more. The fire continues to burn beside you, steady for now, but your attention does not drift far from it. You notice how often your eyes return to the flame, checking its strength, its shape, the way it moves. It becomes a focal point, a responsibility. Scholars remain divided on how labor was distributed within early human groups. Some suggest that tasks like fire tending, food gathering, and tool making were shared, while others believe certain roles may have been more specialized depending on age, skill, or experience. You reach forward again, adjusting a small piece of wood that has shifted out of place. The flame responds immediately, catching the new surface, growing slightly brighter. It is a simple action, but it carries weight. Because without this flame, many things become harder. Warmth disappears, food becomes tougher to eat, night becomes more dangerous, the group becomes more vulnerable. You sit back once more, feeling the heat settle into your body. The sun has risen higher now, though it does little to replace the fire's warmth. The light is brighter, but the air remains cool. You begin to understand that fire is not just a tool. It is a constant task, a quiet responsibility that follows you through every part of the day. You glance outward, toward the open land. The world continues, unchanged by your small efforts. The wind moves, the distant hills remain still, the sky stretches endlessly above. Fire exists only because you make it exist, and maintaining it requires attention that never fully stops. You notice how this shapes your awareness. Even when you move away, part of your attention stays with the flame. You think about whether it will hold, whether it will fade, whether someone will be there to tend it. This is another layer of difficulty. Not just doing something once, but doing it again and again, without pause, without certainty. You stand slowly, stepping just outside the warmth for a moment. The cold touches you immediately, reminding you of what the fire protects you from. You turn back, almost instinctively. The flame flickers, steady but not strong enough to ignore. You return closer, feeling the warmth again, and in that movement, you recognize something subtle. Your life here is shaped by these small centers of stability, the fire, the group, the shelter, each one fragile, each one requiring effort. And the hardest part is not that they can be lost, it is that they must always be maintained. You sit again, watching the flame as it continues to burn. For now, it holds. For now, it is enough. But you already know what comes next. More fuel, more attention, more care, because here, Even something as simple as fire is never truly secure. You begin to notice how much time is spent simply looking for a place to be, not moving toward food, not searching for water, but searching for somewhere that feels, even briefly, less exposed. The land stretches around you, open and uneven, shaped by wind and time. It offers no obvious shelter, no structures, no clear boundaries between safe and unsafe. You walk with a group across a shallow rise, your eyes scanning the terrain ahead. The ground here is scattered with stones, some large enough to create small breaks in the wind, others too small to matter. Every change in the land becomes important. A slight dip in the earth, a cluster of rocks, a line of low trees in the distance. Each one holds potential. Evidence from archaeological sites indicates that early humans often selected temporary living areas based on natural protection rather than building permanent structures. Wind direction, proximity to water, and visibility of the surrounding land all played a role in choosing where to stop. You step down into a shallow depression, and immediately you feel a difference. The wind softens. The air feels more stable. It is not warm, but it is less exposed. You pause, noticing how your body responds. Your shoulders relax slightly, even if only by a small amount. The constant pressure of the open air eases. Others notice it too. They slow their pace, looking around with quiet attention. No one speaks, but the shared awareness is clear. This place offers something, not safety, but a little less risk. You move further in, examining the edges of the depression. The ground is uneven, but manageable. There are no clear signs of immediate danger, no fresh tracks that suggest large predators have recently passed through. Still, you remain cautious. There is no certainty here, only judgment. And you might wonder, how did early humans decide where to stop? Some researchers propose that experience played the largest role, with individuals learning over time which environments offered the best balance of resources and protection. Others believe that group memory, passed down through generations, guided these decisions more than individual instinct. You crouch near a small cluster of stones, touching one lightly. It is cool but steady, unchanged by the shifting air. You imagine how these stones might be arranged to improve the space, creating a small barrier against the wind. The idea is simple, but it requires effort. A lesser-known observation from prehistoric sites is that even minimal adjustments to natural environments could improve comfort and survival. Small windbreaks, repositioned materials, and strategic use of terrain made noticeable differences. You begin to move a few stones, not quickly, but with care. Each one is placed deliberately, forming a low line that interrupts the flow of air. It is not perfect. It does not block everything, but it helps. Others begin to do the same, gathering nearby materials, branches, loose stones, anything that can add to the structure. There is no blueprint, no fixed design, only adaptation. You step back, observing what has been created. It is simple, almost fragile in appearance. But when you stand behind it, you feel the difference immediately. The wind weakens, the air settles. It is enough. For now. You look toward the sky, noticing how the light has shifted. The day is moving forward. And with it, the temperature will change again. The shelter you create now will matter more as the light fades. This is another quiet challenge. Planning for what is not yet happening. You gather a few more pieces, adding them to the structure. The work is steady, unhurried. There is no rush, but there is purpose. Everything you do here connects to something that will happen later. The cold returning. The wind rising, the darkness settling in. You begin to understand that shelter is not a fixed place. It is a temporary solution, a response to conditions that are always changing. There is ongoing discussion about how frequently early humans moved their living areas. Some interpretations suggest short stays of only a few days, while others point to slightly longer periods when resources allowed. You sit within the small space that has been created, feeling the difference it makes. The ground is still firm beneath you, the air is still cool, but the exposure is reduced. It feels quieter, more contained. You glance outward, beyond the edge of the shelter. The open land still stretches in every direction, unchanged. The world remains vast and indifferent, but here, within this small space, you've created something different, something shaped by intention. You run your hand along the edge of the stones, feeling their rough surfaces. They are not comfortable, but they are stable. They hold their position against the wind. This is what shelter means here. Not comfort, not security, but a slight improvement. You notice how your body begins to settle more easily. The constant need to brace against the wind fades, replaced by a quieter awareness. Still, you do not fully relax, because you know this space is temporary. The materials are loose. The structure is simple. A strong shift in weather, a change in location, or the presence of danger could make it unusable. You might find yourself thinking about how different this is from modern life. Today, shelter often feels permanent. Walls, roofs, doors that separate you from the outside world. Here, that separation does not exist in the same way. You're always connected to the environment, always aware of it. The fire is brought into the space, carefully positioned to balance warmth and airflow. Too close to the barrier, and the smoke will gather. Too far, and the heat will not reach. You watch as the flame settles into its place, its light reflecting softly off the surrounding stones. It changes the space immediately. The warmth spreads. The shadows shift. The shelter begins to feel more complete. But even now, it requires attention. You adjust your position slightly, finding a place where the warmth reaches you without becoming overwhelming. The balance is delicate. Too much heat in one direction, too much cold in another. You shift again. Small movements that make a difference. This is how you live here, constantly adjusting, constantly responding. You listen to the wind as it moves around the shelter, noticing how it changes as it meets the barrier you've created. It is not silent, but it is softer, less direct. A small success, and yet, you know it will not last forever. The ground may shift, the materials may loosen, the group may need to move again. This is the nature of shelter in this world. It is not something you own, it is something you create, use, and leave behind. You glance at the others, noticing how naturally they move within the space. Each person finds their position, their place within the small structure. There is no confusion, only quiet understanding. You sit back, letting the warmth settle into your body once more. The fire flickers steadily, the stones holding their shape, the wind moving just beyond your reach. For this moment, it works. For this moment, it is enough. And you begin to see that the hardest part is not simply finding shelter. It is knowing that you will have to do it again, in a different place, under different conditions, with no guarantee that the next one will be as good as this. You rest your hands against the ground, feeling its firmness beneath you. The space you have created holds. For now, and in this world, that is all you can ask for. You notice the tension before you even see the animals. It begins in the way the group slows down, almost at once, as if an invisible signal has passed between everyone. Movements become quieter. Steps are placed more carefully. Even your breathing seems to adjust without conscious thought. You follow their gaze, looking out across the open stretch of land ahead. At first, there's nothing, just pale grass, uneven ground, and distant shapes that could be rocks or shadows. Then, slowly, you see them, a small herd, scattered loosely, heads lowered as they feed. Their movements are calm, unhurried, unaware of your presence for now. You feel a subtle shift inside you, not excitement, not exactly fear, something quieter, focus. You lower your body slightly, copying the posture of those around you. The ground feels firm beneath your hands as you steady yourself. Every movement matters now, every sound carries weight. Findings from prehistoric sites suggest that hunting required careful coordination and patience rather than speed alone. Early humans often relied on strategy, positioning, and persistence rather than sudden force. You glance at the others, noticing how they begin to spread out. Not too far, just enough to create space between them. There is no spoken plan that you can hear, but the intention is clear. Each person becomes part of a wider shape, a quiet formation. You move slowly to your position, feeling the dryness of the grass brush against your legs. The air carries a faint scent of earth and animal, subtle but present. The herd continues to graze. Still unaware, you pause, waiting. Time stretches here. There is no rushing this moment, and you might wonder, how often did hunts like this succeed? Some researchers propose that success rates were relatively low, with many hunts ending without a catch. Others suggest that persistence hunting, where humans followed animals over long distances until they became exhausted, may have increased success in certain environments. You remain still, your attention fixed on the animals. A slight breeze shifts. One of them lifts its head. For a moment, everything holds. Then it lowers its head again. You exhale slowly, barely noticing that you are holding your breath. The group inches closer, not all at once. One movement, then stillness. Another movement, then stillness. It is a rhythm, almost like breathing. You feel your muscles begin to tense, not from strain, but from readiness. The distance is still too great. The timing is not yet right. You wait. A curious detail noted by some researchers is that early humans likely developed a deep understanding of animal behavior, recognizing patterns in movement, feeding, and alertness. This knowledge would have been essential for even a small chance of success. You watch the herd carefully. One animal drifts slightly away from the others, not far, but enough. The group responds. Subtly, positions shift, almost imperceptibly, guiding the separation further. You feel the change in the air. This is the moment. The movement begins, not a sudden rush, but a controlled advance that quickly becomes faster. The animal senses something now. Its head lifts, ears alert, then it runs. You follow, your body moving before your thoughts fully catch up. The ground rushes beneath your feet, uneven and unpredictable. You adjust with each step, your balance shifting constantly. The others move with you, not in a straight line, but in a pattern that narrows the animal's path. Dust rises around you. The sound of movement fills the air. Your breath becomes stronger, deeper, but you keep it steady. The animal changes direction. You adjust. The distance closes slightly, then widens again. It is not a short effort. It is a test. Evidence suggests that endurance may have been one of the key advantages of early humans in hunting. The ability to maintain a steady pace over time, rather than relying on bursts of speed, allowed them to outlast certain prey. You feel the strain begin in your legs, a slow burn that grows with each step. Your chest tightens slightly, your breathing more pronounced now. Still, you continue. There is no choice. The animal slows, just slightly. You notice it immediately. So do the others. The pace remains steady. No one rushes ahead. No one breaks formation. This is not about speed. It is about endurance. You press forward, your body responding to the rhythm of movement, step after step, breath after breath. The world narrowing to this single effort. The distance closes again. The animal stumbles briefly, then recovers. But something has changed. Its movement is less fluid, less certain. You feel a shift in the group, a quiet understanding that the balance is turning, and then, in a final moment of effort, the hunt ends. You stop, your body still moving slightly from the momentum. Your breath is heavy now, your muscles tense, but you remain upright. The animal lies still. Silence returns, not immediately, but gradually. As the sounds of movement fade, you stand there, feeling the weight of what has just happened. This is success, but it is not simple. You step closer, your breathing slowly calming. The others gather, their movements careful, respectful. Nothing is wasted here. Every part matters. Observations from archaeological studies indicate that early humans used a wide range of animal parts, not just for food, but for tools, clothing, and other necessities. Bones, hides, and sinew all served important roles. You watch as the process begins, precise and practiced. There is no hesitation, no uncertainty. Each action follows the next with quiet efficiency. You feel the fatigue in your body more clearly now. The effort of the hunt lingers, settling into your muscles. And yet, alongside it, there is something else. Relief, food, for today, at least. You sit down briefly, letting your body rest. The ground feels solid beneath you, grounding you after the intensity of movement. You might think this is the reward, but even here, the challenge remains, the energy spent, the risk taken, the possibility that it could have ended differently. There is ongoing discussion about how early humans balanced the risks and rewards of hunting compared to gathering. While hunting provided high-value food, it also carried greater uncertainty and danger. You look at the group, noticing how quickly the focus shifts from the hunt itself to what comes next, preparing, carrying, preserving. The work does not stop, it changes. You stand again, helping where needed, your movement slower now but steady. The weight of the task is shared, divided among everyone. This is not individual success, it is collective survival. You begin to walk back, the landscape stretching before you once more. The same ground, the same wind, the same quiet openness. But now, there is something different for a short time. The uncertainty eases. Hunger will not press as sharply today. The effort has brought something real. And still, you know it will not last. Tomorrow, the search begins again. Another hunt, another risk, another test. You take a slow breath, feeling the air fill your lungs, and you begin to understand that the hardest part of the hunt is not the chase itself. It is the uncertainty that comes before and after, the waiting, the effort, the possibility of failure, and the knowledge that even success is only temporary. You continue walking, the group moving together once more. Because in this world, survival is never finished, it simply continues. You begin to notice how little time is spent staying in one place, even after the success of the hunt. Even after the effort that brought food for the day, there is no sense of settling. The group does not relax into permanence. Instead, there is a quiet shift, a preparation that begins almost immediately. You watch as the remains of the camp are adjusted, then gradually reduced. Materials that were gathered are either used, carried, or left behind. Nothing here suggests long-term presence. You stand, looking out across the land, and once more, the same horizon stretches ahead, wide and uncertain, offering no clear destination, and yet you are about to move again. Archaeological evidence indicates that early human groups were highly mobile, often relocating based on seasonal changes, availability of resources, and environmental conditions. Staying too long in one place could lead to depletion of nearby food and water sources. You adjust what little you carry, noticing how light it is. It has to be. Everything must be portable. There is no room for excess, no space for items that do not serve a clear purpose. You begin to walk with the group, leaving behind the place that, for a short time, offered some measure of comfort. There is no hesitation, no looking back. The land ahead becomes your focus. The ground shifts beneath your feet as you move, sometimes firm, sometimes uneven. Small stones press against your soles, reminding you with each step that movement here is never effortless. The sky above remains wide, the light steady but not warm enough to soften the experience. You walk in silence. Not because there is nothing to say, but because movement requires attention. Each step matters. Each direction carries consequences. And you might wonder, how did early humans decide where to go next? Some researchers suggest that movement was guided by memory of past experiences, knowledge of seasonal patterns, and observation of animal migrations. Others believe that unpredictability played a larger role, forcing constant adaptation rather than planned routes. You follow a slight incline, your body adjusting to the change in elevation. From this higher point, the view expands. You can see further now, noticing subtle variations in the landscape, a line of darker vegetation in the distance, a break in the terrain that might suggest water, a cluster of rocks that could provide shelter. Each feature becomes a possibility, but none of them are certain. You continue forward, feeling the steady rhythm of your steps. The effort is not intense, but it is continuous. There is no clear end point, no defined distance to cover. You simply move. A lesser-known detail from studies of early human movement is that daily travel distances could vary widely depending on conditions, sometimes covering several kilometers in search of resources. This constant movement shaped not only physical endurance but also social structure and cooperation. You notice how the group maintains a loose formation, not tightly packed, but not scattered either. There is space between individuals, yet everyone remains within sight. It is a balance between independence and connection. You feel the sun shift slightly as time passes, though its warmth remains limited. The air continues to carry a cool edge, brushing against your skin with each step. Your body begins to respond in small ways. Your legs grow heavier, your shoulders tighten slightly. The effort builds slowly, almost unnoticed at first, then more clearly with time, and still. You keep moving, because stopping is not always an option. You pass through a patch of low vegetation, the plants brushing softly against your legs. Some are dry and brittle, others slightly more flexible. You notice how the ground here holds a bit more moisture, though not enough to suggest a reliable water source. You glance at the others, seeing how their attention shifts as they move, eyes scanning, heads turning slightly, always observing. There is no passive movement here. Every step is active, every moment is aware. You begin to feel the quiet strain of repetition. Step, breath, step, breath. The rhythm continues without variation, and you might think about how different this is from modern movement, where travel is often fast, effortless, detached from the physical experience of distance. Here, distance is felt. It is measured in effort, in time, in energy. You crest another rise, and this time, The view changes more noticeably. Below, the land dips slightly, forming a shallow valley. The vegetation appears thicker there, darker in colour. The ground may hold more moisture, possibly supporting small sources of water. You feel a subtle shift in the group. Attention sharpens. Movement slows slightly as everyone takes in the view. This could be something, or it could be nothing. There is ongoing discussion among researchers about how early humans evaluated landscapes from a distance. Visual cues such as vegetation density, animal presence, and terrain shape likely played key roles. But interpretation was never guaranteed to be accurate. You begin to descend carefully, your steps more cautious on the uneven slope. The ground here is looser, small stones shifting beneath your weight. You adjust your balance with each movement, your body responding instinctively as you reach the lower ground. The air feels slightly different, damp, subtle, but noticeable. You kneel briefly, touching the soil. It is softer here, holding a bit more moisture than the higher ground. This is promising, but still uncertain. You look around, searching for clearer signs, tracks, perhaps animal movement, anything that confirms the presence of water nearby. A faint path appears, worn into the ground. It is not obvious, but it is there. Repeated movement. Animals, most likely. You follow it with your eyes, tracing its direction. It leads further into the valley. You stand again, the group already beginning to move in that direction. Hope, here, is quiet. It does not announce itself loudly. It appears as small signs, subtle changes, possibilities. You walk forward, your body continuing its steady rhythm. The fatigue is still there, but it becomes part of the movement, something you carry rather than resist, and you begin to understand that this is one of the hardest parts of life in this time. Not the movement itself, but the constancy of it, the lack of stillness, the absence of permanence. You never fully arrive, you only pause, briefly, before moving again. You reach a slightly more enclosed part of the valley, where the ground dips further and the vegetation grows thicker. The air feels cooler here, but also more stable. You hear something, faint, a soft, intermittent sound. You stop, listening. Water, not strong, not rushing, but present. You follow the sound, each step bringing it slightly clearer, and then you see it. A small, shallow stream, barely more than a narrow flow across the ground, but it moves, it reflects the light. It is real. You kneel, touching the surface lightly. Cool, clean enough. Relief settles in, not as a strong emotion, but as a quiet easing of tension. The group gathers, each person taking what they need, careful not to disturb the flow too much. This place may hold for a short time, a day, perhaps more, but not forever. You drink, feeling the water move through you, restoring something that had begun to fade. And as you sit back, looking at the small stream, you realize something with quiet clarity. The hardest part of constant movement is not the distance. It is the uncertainty of what lies ahead, the need to keep going without knowing what you will find, and the understanding that even when you do find something, it will not last. You rise slowly, the sound of water still in your ears. For now, you can rest, but only for now. You notice the water not just with your eyes, but with your entire body. The small stream you found earlier continues to move quietly through the shallow ground, its surface catching the light in soft, shifting patterns. It is not large, it is not deep, but it is enough to change everything about this moment. You kneel again, dipping your hand into it. The temperature is cool, almost startling at first, but not unpleasant. It brings a kind of clarity, a sharpness that travels up your arm and settles into your awareness. You bring some to your lips, drinking slowly. The sensation is immediate. Relief. But not complete relief, because even as you drink, you understand something that has already begun to shape your thinking. This water will not always be here. Environmental studies of the late Pleistocene suggest that water sources were often seasonal or unpredictable, especially in open landscapes. Streams could dry, shift, or disappear depending on rainfall and temperature patterns. You sit back slightly, watching the flow. It is steady for now, but it's small, easily changed. Others gather nearby, each person careful not to disturb the water too much. The movements are quiet, controlled. There is no waste here. Every drop matters. You notice how the ground around the stream is darker, softer, holding more life than the surrounding areas. Small plants grow here, their colour deeper, their shape fuller. It is a different world within a small space, and yet it is fragile. You touch the soil again, pressing your fingers into it. It yields slightly, holding moisture that the rest of the land does not. This is what water does. It creates possibility. A detail observed in archaeological research is that early human activity is often found near ancient water sources. These areas provided not only drinking water, but also attracted animals and supported plant life, making them central to survival. You glance outward, beyond the stream, noticing how the landscape quickly returns to its usual dryness. The contrast is clear. Water does not spread far here. It gathers in small places, and those places become important. You listen carefully, hearing more than just the sound of the stream now. There are faint movements nearby, insects, perhaps small animals drawn to the same source. Life concentrates around water. You remain still, observing, and you might wonder, how did early humans locate water when it was not visible? Some researchers suggest that knowledge of terrain, plant patterns, and animal behavior guided these searches. Others believe that trial and error played a larger role, with movement and persistence leading to discovery. You watch as one of the others follows the stream slightly downstream. Examining its path, it is not enough to know that water is here. You need to understand how long it might remain. You stand and follow, stepping carefully along the edge. The ground becomes uneven, soft in places, firm in others. You adjust with each step, your balance shifting as needed. The stream narrows further, its flow becoming less consistent. In some places, it is little more than damp soil. In others, it gathers again briefly before thinning out. This is not a strong source. It is temporary. You feel a quiet awareness settle in. This place cannot support you for long. You turn back, returning to where the group remains gathered. The understanding is shared without words. This is useful, but limited. A lesser-known observation from paleoenvironmental studies is that early humans often had to move between multiple small water sources rather than relying on a single large one. This created a pattern of constant relocation, shaped by availability rather than choice. You kneel again, taking another small drink. You do not rush. There is no excess. You take only what you need, and even that is measured. You notice how your body responds differently now. The dryness that lingered before has eased slightly. Your movements feel more controlled, your thoughts clearer. Water does this. It restores, but only briefly. You sit back, watching the surface again. The light reflects softly, the movement gentle and continuous. It feels calm, but beneath that calm is uncertainty. You begin to understand that water, like food, like shelter, is never guaranteed. It is something you find, something you use, something you lose. There is ongoing discussion among scholars about how early humans managed hydration during long periods without visible water. Some suggest that moisture from food sources, such as plants or animal tissues, may have supplemented direct drinking. Others point to behavioral adaptations, such as traveling during cooler parts of the day to reduce water loss. You glance at the sky. Noticing the position of the sun, time is passing. Though not measured in any precise way, the light has shifted slightly, indicating that the day is moving forward. Soon, decisions will need to be made. Stay longer or move again. You look at the others, seeing the same quiet evaluation in their movements. No one rushes to decide. There is observation, consideration, awareness. This is how decisions happen here, gradually, carefully. You stand once more, stepping slightly away from the stream. The difference is immediate. The air feels drier, the ground firmer, the small sense of abundance fading quickly. It reminds you how limited this place is. You turn back briefly, taking one last look. The water continues to flow, unaware of how much it matters, unchanged by your presence. You walk a short distance, then pause again, scanning the land beyond. The horizon remains wide, open, uncertain. You feel the familiar pattern returning, movement, search, effort, and you might reflect on how different this is from modern life, where water is often constant, accessible, taken for granted. Here, it defines where you can be, how long you can stay, and what choices you make. You return to the group, sitting briefly as the last of the water is taken. No one speaks, but the understanding is clear. This is temporary. Everything is. You rest your hands on the ground, feeling its firmness once more. The moisture from the stream does not extend far. Already, the earth begins to return to its usual state, dry, unyielding. You take a slow breath, noticing how the air feels again, and you begin to understand that the hardest part of water is not finding it. It is depending on something so uncertain, something that can disappear without warning, something that shapes every movement, every decision, every moment of your day. You rise slowly, your body steady again. The stream continues behind you, its sound fading as you step away. For now, you have what you need, but you already know that it will not last. And so, once again, you prepare to move, because in this world, survival is not about what you have. It is about how long it stays with you. You notice your hands before anything else, not because they hurt, but because of how often you rely on them. Every surface you touch, every object you pick up, every small task you perform depends on what your hands can do. There are no complex tools here, no finely crafted instruments that solve problems quickly, only simple shapes, rough edges, and materials taken directly from the land. You sit near a small cluster of stones, picking one up and turning it slowly in your fingers. It is heavier than it looks, uneven along its edges, shaped more by fracture than by design, yet it has purpose. Archaeological evidence shows that early humans used stone tools for a wide range of tasks, including cutting, scraping, and processing food. These tools were often created by striking one stone against another to produce sharp edges. You bring the stone closer, examining its surface. One side is sharper than the other, not perfectly smooth, but enough to cut. It is simple, but it works. You glance at the others, watching as they use similar tools with quiet familiarity. One person carefully slices through a piece of animal material, separating it into smaller sections. Another uses a different stone to scrape, removing what is not needed. There is no hesitation, only practice. You try to mimic the motion, pressing the edge of your stone against a small piece of material. The resistance is immediate. It does not glide easily. It requires pressure, control, and attention. You adjust your grip, applying more force. The edge catches slightly, then moves through. It is not clean, not smooth, but it is effective. A curious observation from tool studies is that even the simplest stone implements required skill to produce and use properly. The angle of impact, the type of stone, and the force applied all influence the final shape and effectiveness. You continue working, your hands beginning to feel the strain, the repeated motion, the pressure against rough surfaces, the small adjustments in grip all build over time. It is not a single effort. It is constant. You pause briefly, flexing your fingers. They feel stiff, slightly sore, but still capable. You return to the task, because stopping does not complete the work. You might wonder how long it took early humans to become skilled with these tools. Some researchers suggest that tool making and use were learned gradually, through observation and repetition. Others believe that certain individuals may have developed higher levels of skill, passing that knowledge on within the group. You watch as one of the others shapes a new piece of stone. The process is careful, deliberate. They strike it with another rock, creating a sharp edge through controlled force. Each strike matters. Too strong, and the piece breaks incorrectly. Too weak, and nothing changes. The balance is precise. You listen to the sound it makes. A sharp, clear strike, followed by a softer shift as the fragment separates. It is a sound that carries meaning, signaling success or failure. You try again with your own piece, adjusting your angle slightly. The result is better this time. The edge forms more clearly, sharper than before. You feel a small sense of progress, not satisfaction exactly, but improvement. You begin to understand that tools here are not permanent. They wear down, they break, they need to be remade. There is ongoing discussion about how frequently early humans produced new tools versus reusing existing ones. Some evidence suggests that certain tools were carried over long distances, while others were made quickly and discarded when no longer useful. You set your stone aside briefly, examining the work around you. Pieces of material are gradually transformed into something usable. Food is prepared, skins are treated, bones are separated, everything connects. Tools make these processes possible, but they do not make them easy. You pick up the stone again, continuing your task. The repetition becomes steady, almost rhythmic. Press, cut, adjust, repeat. Your hands adapt slowly, finding positions that reduce strain. Your movements become slightly more efficient. Still, the effort remains. You notice how much time this takes. What might seem like a simple task stretches into a long sequence of actions. There are no shortcuts, no faster methods. Only patience. You glance outward for a moment, seeing the landscape beyond. The same open land, unchanged. Waiting. The work you do here does not change the world around you, it only helps you move through it. A lesser-known detail from archaeological findings is that tool-making sites often contain large amounts of discarded stone fragments, evidence of repeated attempts and adjustments. This suggests that creating effective tools was not always straightforward. You return your focus to the task, feeling the edge of the stone against your fingers. It is sharp enough to be useful, but also capable of causing harm if handled carelessly. You adjust your grip again, more cautious now. This is another challenge, using something that can help you, but also injure you. You continue working, your attention steady, your movements controlled. Time passes, the light shifts slightly, the work continues. Eventually you pause, setting the tool down beside you. The piece you have been working on is now smaller, more manageable. It is ready to be used. For now. You look at your hands again, noticing the small marks. the slight redness where the stone pressed repeatedly. They are not severe, but they are there, evidence of effort. You flex your fingers once more, feeling the lingering tension, and you begin to understand something quietly. The hardest part of using tools is not their simplicity. It is the constant need to rely on them despite their limits. They help, but only to a point. They do not remove the effort. They do not eliminate the time required. They do not guarantee success. You glance at the others, seeing the same steady work continue. No one rushes. No one expects immediate results. This is the pace of life here. Slow, deliberate, unavoidable. You pick up the tool again, feeling its weight, its shape, its rough edges. It is enough, not perfect, but enough. And in this world, that is what matters, because everything you use, everything you create, everything you depend on exists within this same pattern. Limited, temporary, requiring effort. You set the tool down once more, your hands resting briefly. The work will continue. It always does. You begin to notice the body in a different way when something feels slightly off. Not pain, not immediately, just a subtle shift, a heaviness that lingers longer than usual, a movement that feels slower, less certain. It is easy to ignore at first, especially in a world where discomfort is constant. But here, even small changes matter. You sit near the edge of the shelter, your body still after the steady work of the day. The air is cool, the fire nearby offering a gentle warmth that reaches only so far. You take a slow breath, noticing how it feels in your chest. A little tighter than before. You do not react right away because this could be anything. Fatigue, cold, hunger. All of these are familiar, but you remain aware. Observations from paleoanthropology suggest that early humans faced a wide range of health challenges, including injuries, infections, and environmental stress, with very limited means of treatment. Recovery depended largely on the body's own ability to heal, supported by rest and care from others. You shift slightly, adjusting your position. The ground beneath you is firm, as always, offering no comfort beyond stability. You lean back against the stone, feeling its cool surface through the thin layer that separates you from it. The sensation is grounding, but the heaviness remains. You glance at the others, watching their movements. Everything continues as usual. The fire is maintained, materials are prepared, small tasks are completed with quiet efficiency. Life does not pause, even when something feels wrong. You might wonder how early humans understood illness. Some researchers propose that physical symptoms were recognized through experience, patterns observed over time within the group. Others suggest that understanding was limited, with many conditions simply endured rather than explained. You bring your hand to your arm, pressing lightly against the skin. There is no clear injury, no visible cause, and yet something feels different. This is part of the difficulty, not knowing. A lesser-known insight from skeletal studies is that some early human remains show evidence of healed injuries, suggesting that individuals were sometimes cared for by their group during periods of weakness. This implies a level of social support that extended beyond immediate survival tasks. You watch as one of the others moves closer, briefly glancing at you. There is no spoken question, no direct response, but the awareness is there. You're seen. You sit quietly, letting your body rest. Time passes. The fire shifts slightly, its light flickering against the stone walls. The warmth rises and falls, never fully steady. You feel a slight chill again. Despite being close to the flame, your body does not hold heat as easily as before. You adjust your covering, pulling it closer. It helps, but only a little. You begin to understand that illness here is not a separate event. It blends into everything else. Cold, hunger, fatigue, all of it overlaps. There's ongoing discussion among researchers about how early humans responded to sickness without formal medicine. Some suggest the use of natural remedies, such as certain plants, while others believe that most recovery relied on rest and the body's own resilience. You close your eyes briefly, not to sleep, but to feel your breathing, your heartbeat, the way your body responds to stillness. There is no immediate danger, but there is uncertainty. You open your eyes again, watching the fire. The flame continues, unaffected by how you feel. The world moves forward, unchanged. This is another quiet truth. Your condition does not alter the environment. You must adapt to it. You shift your position once more, trying to find a place where your body feels more balanced. The ground does not change. The air does not soften. Only your awareness shifts. You notice how your energy feels lower now. Movements that were simple earlier require more attention. Even sitting upright takes effort. And you might think about how difficult it is to rest here. Rest is not complete. It is partial. You remain aware of your surroundings. Even as your body seeks recovery, you listen to the sounds around you. The fire crackling softly, the faint movement of others nearby, the distant wind passing across the open land. Everything continues. You are part of it, even in stillness. A curious observation from anthropological studies is that social groups may have adjusted their pace or behavior slightly to accommodate weaker members, though this likely depended on circumstances and resource availability. You glance at the others again, noticing how the rhythm of the group remains steady. There is no visible concern, no disruption, but there is space. You are not required to move immediately, for now. You lower yourself slightly, resting your weight more fully against the ground. The firmness is unchanged, but your body accepts it. You focus on your breathing again, slow, steady. You begin to feel a slight easing, not a full recovery, but a small shift, enough to continue, because that is the measure here, not complete health, but the ability to go on. You sit for a while longer, letting your strength return in small amounts. The fire continues to burn beside you, its warmth steady enough to support you. Eventually, you begin to move again, slowly, carefully. You stand, testing your balance. It holds, not perfectly, but enough. You take a step, then another. Each movement is measured, your body responding with caution. The heaviness remains, but it does not stop you. You rejoin the group, your pace slightly slower, but aligned. This is how illness exists here, not as something separate, but as something you carry, alongside everything else. You begin to understand that the hardest part is not just the physical discomfort, it is the uncertainty. Not knowing how long it will last, not knowing if it will worsen, not knowing if you will recover fully, and still, you move, because you must. The land does not wait, the group continues, and you remain part of it, even when your body feels uncertain. You take another step, steadying yourself. The world around you remains the same, open, cool, unpredictable. And you continue within it, carrying both strength and weakness at the same time. You notice the child before you notice anything else, not because they are loud, but because of how carefully they move within the group. Smaller steps, shorter reach, a rhythm that does not quite match the steady pace of the adults around them. You slow slightly, watching as they navigate the uneven ground. Each step is deliberate, their attention fixed on where their foot will land. The land does not adjust for them. It remains the same, firm and unpredictable. They adapt to it. You remain close, not guiding directly, but aware. The space between you is small, enough to reach if needed. Life here does not pause for childhood, it continues. Evidence from prehistoric burials and skeletal remains indicates that children were a significant part of early human groups, and their survival depended heavily on care, protection, and shared responsibility. You walk alongside them, noticing how they observe everything: the ground, the plants, the movements of others. Their attention is constant, absorbing information without being told. This is how learning happens here, through watching, through doing, through being present. You might wonder how children were taught in a world without formal instruction. Some researchers suggest that knowledge was passed down through demonstration and imitation, with younger members gradually taking on more responsibility. Others believe that play itself may have served as a form of learning, allowing children to practice skills in a low-risk way. You see it in small moments. The child picks up a stick, examining it briefly before mimicking the motion of someone using a tool. The action is not perfect, not efficient, but it reflects what they have seen. You continue walking, adjusting your pace to match theirs without thinking about it. The group moves as one, but not at single speed. There is variation, flexibility. This is necessary. You notice how often the child looks upward, toward the adults, then back to the ground, checking, learning, staying aware. Their awareness is different from yours, less shaped by experience, more open, but still guided by the same environment. A lesser-known insight from anthropological studies is that early human childhood may have been longer than that of many other species, allowing more time for learning complex skills related to survival and social interaction. You reach a slightly uneven patch of ground, where loose stones shift underfoot. The child hesitates briefly, their movement slowing. You pause as well, allowing them to navigate it. They step carefully, testing the ground before committing their weight. One stone shifts, then settles. They adjust, then continue. You feel a quiet sense of recognition. This is how adaptation begins, not through instruction alone, but through experience. You move forward again, the land opening slightly ahead. The group maintains its steady rhythm, each person aware of their position, their role, their surroundings. The child remains close, their steps becoming more confident as the ground stabilizes. You notice how energy is managed differently here. Children cannot sustain the same pace, the same effort. They require more care, more attention, and that attention has a cost. Time, energy, resources. There is ongoing discussion among researchers about how early human groups balance the demands of raising children with the challenges of survival. Some interpretations suggest strong cooperative care, where multiple individuals contributed to the upbringing of the young. You see this in subtle ways. Another adult moves closer, briefly taking position on the other side of the child, not replacing you, but supporting. The responsibility is shared. You continue walking, the rhythm steady again. The sun has shifted slightly. Its light consistent but not strong enough to soften the environment. The air remains cool. The ground remains firm. Nothing changes to make this easier. And yet, life continues within it. You notice the child begin to tire. Their steps slow slightly. Their posture less steady. You recognize it immediately. Fatigue. It comes sooner for them. You pause again, allowing space for rest. The group adjusts without disruption. Movement slows, but does not stop entirely. This is how balance is maintained. A quiet adjustment, not a full stop. You kneel briefly, meeting their level. There is no spoken reassurance, but your presence is enough. They remain still for a moment, then begin to move again, small steps, careful, determined. You stand and continue with them. This is another layer of difficulty in this world. Not just surviving for yourself, but ensuring the survival of others, those who cannot yet do everything on their own. You might reflect on how different this is from modern life, where childhood is often protected, extended, separated from the full demands of survival. Here, there is no separation, only inclusion from the beginning. You move toward a slightly more sheltered area, where the ground rises gently and the wind softens just a little. It is not a full shelter, but it offers some relief. The group begins to settle briefly, not stopping completely, but reducing movement enough to rest. You sit, the child nearby, their breathing slightly heavier now. You watch as they observe the surroundings even while resting. Their attention does not fade completely. It cannot. You begin to understand that learning here is continuous. There is no defined moment when it begins or ends. It is always happening. You rest your hands on the ground, feeling its firmness once more. The same ground that supports you also challenges you. The same environment that sustains life also tests it. You look at the child again, noticing how quickly they recover. The fatigue fades just enough for them to continue. Resilience begins early, not as a choice, but as a necessity. You stand again, preparing to move. The group follows, the rhythm returns. Step, breath, step, breath. You remain close, aware of their presence, their movement, their pace. And you begin to understand that the hardest part of raising children in this time is not just protecting them. It is guiding them through a world that does not adjust for their presence, a world that remains constant in its demands, a world where learning is not optional, where adaptation must happen quickly. You take another step, steady and measured. The land stretches ahead once more, and the child walks beside you, learning, adapting, becoming part of the same rhythm that carries you forward. You begin to notice the group more closely when the land offers no immediate task. No hunt in progress, no shelter being built, no water to gather. Just a quiet stretch of time where movement slows and attention shifts inward, toward each other. You sit near the fire as it settles into a steady burn, its light soft against the surrounding ground. The air is calm for now, the wind reduced to a faint movement that brushes lightly against your skin, around you. The others sit in small distances from one another, not crowded, but not isolated either. Each position seems chosen, not randomly, but with an understanding of space and connection. You watch how they interact without speaking, a glance, a slight movement, the passing of a small object. These are not large gestures, but they carry meaning. Studies of early human social behavior suggest that cooperation was essential for survival, with group living providing advantages in hunting, protection, and resource sharing. Without this connection, the challenges of the environment would have been far more difficult to manage. You shift slightly, noticing how your position relates to the others. You're not at the center, but not at the edge either. You are part of the structure, one point within a larger pattern, and that pattern matters. You see it in how tasks are distributed. One person adjusts the fire, another prepares materials, someone else watches the surrounding land. No one directs, no one commands, and yet, everything happens. You might wonder how leadership functioned in such groups. Some researchers propose that leadership was situational, changing depending on the task or environment. Others suggest that experience and skill may have given certain individuals more influence. Even without formal authority, you observe quietly, noticing how decisions seem to emerge rather than being declared. Movement begins with one person, then spreads gradually as others respond. It is subtle, but effective. A lesser-known detail from anthropological observations is that many small-scale societies rely on shared decision-making, where consensus builds through quiet agreement rather than explicit instruction. You feel the presence of the group not just physically, but in a deeper way. There is a sense of awareness, of being part of something larger than your individual experience. You glance at the fire again, watching how its light reaches each person differently. Some sit closer, receiving more warmth. Others remain slightly further away, balancing comfort with space. No one takes more than they need, because taking too much would affect the others. You notice how food is handled in a similar way. When something is available, it is divided, not equally in a precise sense, but fairly, based on need and circumstance. You take a small portion when it is offered, accepting it without hesitation, without question. This is how the group functions, through trust, through understanding, and you might think about how difficult that is to maintain. Trust requires consistency, reliability, a shared awareness that everyone depends on everyone else. There is ongoing discussion among scholars about the role of social bonds in early human evolution. Some suggest that cooperation and empathy played a key role in survival, while others emphasize competition and individual ability. You sit quietly, feeling the balance between these ideas. There is cooperation here, but also independence. Each person contributes, but each person must also be capable on their own. You notice a small interaction nearby. Two individuals working on the same task, their movements coordinated without speaking. One adjusts a piece of material, the other responds immediately. Continuing the process, it is seamless, not practiced in a formal way, but understood. You begin to see that communication here is not always verbal. It exists in movement, in timing, in shared experience. A curious observation from studies of early communication suggests that gesture and expression may have played a significant role before the development of complex language. These forms of interaction allowed coordination without the need for detailed speech. You shift your position slightly, feeling the ground beneath you once more. The firmness is familiar now, almost expected. You glance outward, beyond the group, toward the open land. It remains the same, unpredictable, unchanging in its demands, and yet, within the group, something different exists, a structure, a system, a form of stability. You return your attention to the others, noticing how the presence of the group changes your experience of the environment. The cold feels less intense, the uncertainty feels more manageable, not because the world has changed, but because you are not facing it alone. You might reflect on how this compares to modern life, where connection often feels optional, sometimes even distant. Here, it is essential. Without it, survival becomes far more difficult. You notice how closely the group remains even when resting. No one moves too far away. The distance is maintained within sight, within awareness. This is not accidental. It is protective. You feel it in your own movements. You do not wander far. You remain connected because separation carries risk. You listen to the quiet sounds around you, the fire, the soft movements of others, the distant wind. It creates a rhythm, not loud, not demanding, but steady. You begin to understand that this rhythm is part of what holds the group together. Shared time, shared space, shared effort. You look at the faces around you, noticing the subtle expressions, the calm focus, the absence of unnecessary movement. There is no excess here, only what is needed. You feel a quiet sense of alignment, not comfort in the modern sense, but belonging, a place within a structure that functions. And you begin to realize that the hardest part of social life in this time is not simply staying together. It is maintaining that balance between sharing and conserving, between helping and preserving your own strength, between trusting others and remaining capable on your own. You shift slightly, adjusting your position near the fire once more. The warmth reaches you, steady and reliable for now. The group remains around you, each person part of the same quiet system. You take a slow breath, feeling the air move through you, and for a moment, the constant challenges of the environment feel slightly less heavy, not gone, but shared, and that makes a difference. You notice the silence change before anything appears. It is not that the land becomes completely quiet. The wind still moves, the grass still shifts, but something subtle is different. The background sounds feel thinner, as if something nearby has caused the smaller movements to pause. You slow your steps, not because you see danger, but because you feel the possibility of it. The group responds in the same way. Movements become quieter, spacing adjusts slightly. No one signals, yet everyone seems to understand. You look outward across the terrain, your eyes moving slowly from one point to another. The land appears the same as before. Low vegetation, uneven ground, no immediate sign of change. And yet, the awareness remains. Studies of prehistoric ecosystems indicate that early humans shared their environment with a range of large predators, including big cats and scavenging carnivores. These animals were often highly adapted to the same conditions, making encounters a constant risk. You take another step, placing your foot carefully, avoiding loose stones. The ground feels firm beneath you. But your attention is not on the ground now. It is on the distance, on the spaces between what you can clearly see. You might wonder how early humans recognized danger without modern tools or warnings. Some researchers suggest that sensitivity to environmental changes, such as shifts in sound or movement, played a key role. Others believe that experience shaped an intuitive awareness, allowing individuals to detect subtle signs that indicated risk. You pause again, your body still. Then you see it, not clearly at first. A shape, low to the ground, partially hidden by the uneven terrain. It does not move, but it is there. Your breathing slows. You do not step forward. You do not step back. You wait. The others have seen it too. Their positions shift slightly, forming a wider space between individuals, reducing the chance of being grouped too closely. This is not panic, it is adjustment. A lesser-known insight from predator-prey dynamics suggests that spreading out can reduce the effectiveness of certain hunting strategies used by large carnivores, making it harder for them to focus on a single target. You remain still, watching. The shape moves. Just slightly, enough to confirm what it is. An animal, large. Aware, but not approaching. The distance between you holds. For now, you feel the tension settle into your body, not sharp, but steady. Your muscles are ready, your attention fixed. There is no sudden action, no immediate threat, but the possibility is present. You might think about how different this is from modern encounters with danger, where barriers and distance often provide a sense of control. Here, there is no barrier, only space and awareness. The animal lifts its head slightly, its gaze shifting across the group. It is observing, assessing, just as you are. There is no clear intention. Not yet. There is ongoing discussion among researchers about how often early humans encountered predators directly. Some evidence suggests that while encounters were not constant, the presence of predators was a persistent factor shaping behavior and movement. You take a slow breath, maintaining your position. The group does not advance, the animal does not approach. Time stretches again, measured in stillness rather than motion. You begin to understand that not every encounter leads to action. Sometimes, survival is about holding position, waiting, allowing the moment to pass without escalation. The animal shifts again, turning slightly. Its attention moves elsewhere. The tension does not disappear immediately, but it softens, gradually. You remain still a moment longer, ensuring that the change is real, not temporary. Then, slowly, movement returns, one step, then another, careful, measured. The group begins to adjust direction slightly, not directly away, but enough to increase distance. This is not retreat, it is avoidance. A curious observation from behavioral studies is that early humans likely relied heavily on avoidance strategies rather than confrontation when dealing with predators. Minimizing risk was often more effective than direct conflict. You continue walking, your awareness still heightened. The landscape feels different now, even though it has not changed. You see more, notice more, the spaces between rocks, the shadows beneath low vegetation. Everything carries potential meaning. You glance back briefly. The animal is no longer visible, but that does not remove the memory of its presence. You turn forward again, your steps steady. The group regains its rhythm, though slightly altered, quieter, more attentive. You feel the residual tension in your body, a subtle reminder that the world around you is not neutral, it is shared. You might reflect on how this constant awareness shapes behavior. There is no moment where you fully relax, no space where you are completely removed from the possibility of danger. Even in calm, there is caution. You walk for a while longer, the land stretching ahead once more. The air moves gently, the sounds of the environment returning to their usual pattern, but your awareness remains sharper now. You have seen what exists beyond the immediate. You have felt the presence of something that could change everything, and you begin to understand that the hardest part of living alongside predators is not the encounter itself. It is the constant possibility of it, the knowledge that, at any moment, the balance can shift. That safety is not a fixed state. It is temporary, maintained through awareness, movement, and choice. You take another step, your body steady again. The group continues forward, each person carrying the same quiet understanding. The land remains open, uncertain, shared, and you move within it, aware of what you cannot always see, but must always consider. You begin to notice the land changing in ways that are not immediately obvious. At first, it is only a small detail. The color of the ground shifts slightly, the tones becoming lighter in some areas, darker in others. The vegetation appears thinner in places where it once seemed more consistent. Even the air feels different, carrying a dryness that was not as present before. You walk with the group, your attention drawn to these subtle differences. Nothing dramatic has happened. There is no sudden storm, no visible transformation. And yet, something is changing. Evidence from paleoclimate research suggests that around 70,000 years ago, environmental conditions could shift gradually over time, affecting rainfall patterns, vegetation growth, and the availability of resources. These changes were not always immediate, but their effects accumulated. You step forward, your foot pressing into the ground. It feels slightly harder than before, less moisture, less give. You notice how the plants respond to this as well. Leaves appear smaller, more spaced apart. Some areas that once held more growth now seem sparse. It is not a complete loss, but it is enough to matter. You might wonder how early humans recognized these gradual changes. Some researchers propose that long-term observation allowed groups to detect patterns over time, noticing when certain areas became less reliable. Others suggest that the changes were often only understood through experience. When familiar resources began to disappear, you continue walking, scanning the land ahead. The horizon remains wide, but the details feel different now. The group adjusts its movement slightly, not stopping, but shifting direction as if responding to something unspoken. You follow, trusting the shared awareness. A curious detail from environmental studies is that even small variations in rainfall could significantly impact food availability in prehistoric landscapes. A slight decrease could reduce plant growth, which in turn affected animal populations. You feel the air move across your skin, noticing how it lacks the faint moisture it carried before. It is not harsh, but it is dry enough to be noticeable. You take a slow breath, sensing the difference. Your body responds in small ways. Your lips feel slightly more dry, your throat more aware of its need. These are early signs, not urgent, but important. You walk a little further, noticing the absence of certain things, fewer tracks in the soil, less movement in the distance. The land feels quieter, but not in a peaceful way, in a reduced way. There is ongoing discussion among researchers about how early humans responded to environmental stress. Some suggest that increased mobility allowed groups to leave less productive areas, while others believe that adaptation within the same region was sometimes necessary. You pause briefly, looking back at the path you've taken. The difference is subtle, but visible now that you are aware of it. The ground behind you appears slightly more varied, slightly more alive. Ahead, the landscape feels more uniform, more limited. You turn forward again, continuing with the group. The movement is steady, but there is a quiet urgency beneath it now, not rushed, but purposeful. You begin to understand that change does not always announce itself clearly. It arrives slowly, quietly, until it becomes impossible to ignore. You step over a patch of dry ground, the soil cracking slightly beneath your weight. The sound is faint, but noticeable. You look down, observing the pattern. This area has not held moisture for some time. You glance toward the others, seeing the same awareness in their movements. No one comments, but the direction continues to shift, guiding the group toward areas that may offer more. You might think about how difficult it is to respond to changes that are not immediate. There is no clear moment to act, no single event that demands attention, only a gradual shift that requires interpretation. You walk toward a slightly lower area, where the land dips just enough to suggest that water might gather there under the right conditions. But as you approach, you see that it is dry, not completely barren, but lacking what you hope to find. You feel a quiet adjustment in your thinking. This place will not hold. You move on. The sun continues its path, the light steady but offering little warmth. The air remains dry, the ground firm beneath your feet. Everything points to the same conclusion. This area is becoming less reliable. A lesser-known insight from prehistoric migration patterns is that groups often followed shifting resource zones, moving in response to environmental changes that altered where food and water could be found. You continue walking, your body maintaining its rhythm despite the growing awareness of change. Step, breath, step, breath. The pattern continues, but your attention is more focused now. You look for signs, any indication that conditions improve, a darker patch of soil, a thicker cluster of plants, movement in the distance. Each one matters. You begin to understand that survival here depends not just on reacting to immediate needs, but on anticipating what comes next. If the land continues to dry, food will become harder to find, water will become less reliable, movement will become more frequent. You feel the weight of that understanding not as fear, but as awareness, a constant calculation. You glance at the sky, noticing the absence of clouds. The light is clear, uninterrupted. beautiful in a way, but also revealing. There is no sign of change above. You return your gaze to the ground, continuing forward. The group maintains its pace, each person contributing to the shared movement. There is no pause, no hesitation, only adjustment. You begin to see that the hardest part of environmental change is not the moment when it becomes severe. It is the period before that, when the signs are subtle, when the decisions are uncertain, when you must choose whether to stay or move without complete information. You take another step, feeling the firmness of the ground beneath you, the dryness, the shift. You continue walking, your awareness fully engaged now. Because in this world, survival depends on noticing what is changing before it is too late. And once again, you move forward. You begin to notice how much of what you do depends on remembering, not written down, not spoken in long explanations, but carried quietly in your mind, shaped by what you have seen before. You walk across the uneven ground, your steps steady, your attention moving between the land ahead and the memory of what came before. The landscape offers clues, but those clues only matter if you recognize them. A certain pattern in the soil, a type of plant that grows where moisture once gathered, the direction animals tend to move at certain times of day. Each detail means something, but only if it has been learned. Research in cognitive archaeology suggests that early humans relied heavily on memory to navigate their environments, track resources, and pass on survival knowledge without external records. The mind itself became the primary tool for storing information. You slow slightly, looking at a stretch of ground where the soil changes colour. It is faint, easy to miss, but familiar in a way that feels important. You have seen this before, somewhere, at another time. You pause, letting the memory settle. The ground like this often held water, not now, but before. You step closer, examining it more carefully. The texture is different, slightly finer, as if it once held more moisture than the surrounding areas. You look outward, following the direction where the ground continues. This might lead somewhere, or it might not. You begin to move along it, your pace measured. The group follows, not because you have signalled clearly, but because your movement aligns with their own observations. This is how knowledge works here, shared, unspoken, built from many small experiences. You might wonder how much early humans could remember about the land. Some researchers propose that memory maps, mental representations of terrain and resources, played a crucial role in survival. Others suggest that memory was more flexible, adapting constantly rather than storing fixed roots. You continue forward, noticing how the pattern in the soil becomes less distinct. The memory fades slightly, uncertainty returns. You slow again. This is the challenge. Memory is not perfect. It shifts, it blends, it leaves gaps. A curious observation from studies of traditional foraging societies is that knowledge of landscapes can be extensive but also dynamic, changing with environmental conditions and personal experience. You glance at the others, seeing how their attention moves across the same space. Each person carries their own set of memories, their own understanding of the land. Together, these memories form something larger, but not complete. You step forward again, choosing a direction that feels slightly more likely than the others. It is not certainty, it is judgment. You feel the weight of that, because the wrong direction costs time, energy, opportunity. You walk for a while, the ground shifting beneath your feet, the pattern you followed becoming less clear. Eventually, you stop. The signs are no longer strong enough to guide you. You look around, reassessing. This happens often. Memory leads you part of the way. Then you must rely on observation again. There is ongoing discussion among researchers about how early humans balanced memory with real-time decision-making. Some suggest that memory provided a framework. While immediate conditions shaped final choices, you turn slightly, adjusting your direction. The group responds, following the change without hesitation. This flexibility is essential. Holding too strongly to a memory that no longer applies can lead to failure. You begin to understand that memory is not a fixed guide. It is a tool, one that must be used carefully. You continue walking, your attention shifting between what you see and what you recall. A certain type of plant appears ahead. You recognize it. It tends to grow in areas where the soil holds more moisture. You move toward it. Your pace slightly quicker now. The others notice as well. Their movement aligns with yours. The group adjusts as one. You reach the area, examining the ground more closely. It is still dry, but less so than before. The signs are subtle, but they are there. You feel a small sense of alignment between memory and observation. This is what you look for, not certainty, but confirmation. You kneel briefly, touching the soil. It is slightly softer, a small difference, but meaningful. You stand again, continuing forward. The land begins to change just enough to support your direction. Not dramatically, but gradually. You might reflect on how much trust is placed in something you cannot see directly. Memory exists in your mind, shaped by past experience. It guides you, but it does not guarantee anything. You feel the quiet tension of that reliance. A lesser-known insight from cognitive studies is that memory in early humans was likely reinforced through repetition and shared experience, strengthening certain patterns while allowing others to fade. You walk for a while longer, the ground slowly becoming more varied again. The signs improve, not enough to fully confirm your direction, but enough to continue. You glance at the others, noticing how their movements remain steady, their attention aligned with yours. This is not individual knowledge, it is collective. Each person contributes to the direction. Even without speaking, you begin to understand that memory is not just something you carry alone. It is something the group holds together, through shared experience, through repeated movement across the same types of land, through small corrections over time. You take another step, your body steady, your mind engaged. The environment continues to shift, offering new clues, new patterns, new possibilities. You remain aware of all of it, because here, forgetting can have consequences. Missing a sign, misremembering a path, choosing the wrong direction. Each one carries a cost. And you begin to see that the hardest part of relying on memory is not simply remembering, it is knowing when memory is no longer enough, when to trust it, when to question it, when to let it guide you, and when to let it go. You continue forward, the land opening slightly ahead. The pattern holds for now, but you remain ready to adjust, because in this world, knowledge is never complete. It is always in motion, just like you. You begin to notice absence in a way that feels heavier than anything else. Not the absence of food or water, not even the absence of warmth, but the absence of someone who was there before. At first, it is subtle, a space near the fire that remains empty, a familiar movement that does not happen, a presence that you expect to see, but do not. You sit quietly, aware of it without fully naming it. The group remains gathered as it always does, the rhythm of daily life continuing, the tasks carried out with the same steady focus. And yet, something has changed. Evidence from prehistoric burial sites suggests that early humans experienced loss and may have engaged in practices that reflect awareness of death, such as placing bodies in specific positions or including objects with them. You look around, noticing how the group adjusts in small ways. No one speaks of the absence directly. There is no visible disruption, but there is a quiet shift in the pattern, one fewer movement, one fewer position filled. You feel it in your own awareness, the way your attention drifts briefly toward the space that is no longer occupied. You might wonder how early humans understood loss. Some researchers propose that while the emotional experience may have been similar to what you feel today, the expression of it was shaped by the demands of survival. Others suggest that social bonds were strong enough to create lasting impressions. Even in a world where life was uncertain, you sit closer to the fire, watching the flame as it flickers steadily. The warmth reaches you, as it always does, unchanged by what has happened. The world continues. This is what feels most difficult. The lack of pause. You notice how the tasks of the day still need to be done. Food must be prepared. Movement must continue. Shelter must be maintained. There is no space to stop entirely. A lesser-known observation from anthropological studies is that in small groups, the loss of even one individual could have practical consequences, affecting labour distribution, knowledge, and social dynamics. You feel that shift as well, not in a dramatic way, but in small adjustments. Someone takes on a task that was not theirs before. Another moves into a position that has been left open. The structure changes, but it does not break. You glance at the others, noticing how their movements remain steady. There is no visible hesitation, no sign of uncertainty, but there is awareness, shared, quiet. You begin to understand that loss here is not separate from life. It is part of it. You might think about how modern life allows for extended periods of reflection, of mourning, of stepping away from daily demands. Here, that distance does not exist. You remain within the same rhythm, the same environment, the same conditions. You carry the awareness with you as you move. You stand, following the group as they begin to shift direction once more. The land stretches ahead, unchanged, offering no acknowledgement of what has occurred. The air feels the same. The ground feels the same, only your perception is different. There is ongoing discussion among researchers about whether early humans developed symbolic behaviours related to death, such as rituals or markings. Some findings suggest early forms of such practices, while others remain uncertain. You walk in silence, your steps aligned with the group. The absence remains with you, not overwhelming, but present. You notice how your attention returns to it at unexpected moments. When you glance around, when you pause, when the rhythm of movement slows, it does not fade quickly, it lingers. You continue forward, the ground firm beneath your feet, the air moving gently around you. The group remains intact, but altered. You begin to see that resilience here is not about avoiding loss. It is about continuing despite it. You might wonder how strength is defined in a world like this, not by control, not by certainty, but by the ability to move forward. You feel that in your own movement. Each step carries both presence and absence. You do not stop. You cannot. The land does not allow it. You reach a small rise. Pausing briefly at the top, the view opens before you. The same wide landscape stretching into the distance. You take a slow breath, letting the air fill your lungs. The world remains vast, unchanged, and within it, you continue. You begin to understand that the hardest part of loss is not the moment it happens. It is everything that follows, the continuation of life without what was once there, the adjustment of patterns, the quiet rebalancing of the group. You turn slightly, following the others as they move forward again. The rhythm returns, step, breath, step, breath. But it feels different now, subtly. You carry that awareness with you, not as a burden, but as part of your experience, part of what it means to be here. You take another step, steady and deliberate. The group moves together once more, and the world continues around you. As it always does, you begin to notice something quieter than all the challenges that came before. Not hunger, not cold, not movement, but the way you continue despite all of them. You walk with the group across a stretch of land that feels familiar now. Even if it is not the same place you stood before, the ground is uneven, the air carries a cool edge, and the horizon remains wide and open. Nothing about the environment has become easier, and yet your awareness of it has changed. You step forward, your movement steady, your attention balanced between what is around you and what you have learned to expect. Each challenge you have faced has left something behind, not in the land, but in you. Research into early human behavior suggests that adaptability was one of the most important traits for survival, allowing groups to respond to changing conditions, shifting resources, and constant uncertainty. You feel that adaptability in small ways, in how you place your steps more carefully, in how you read the ground more quickly, in how you notice the subtle differences in air, light, and sound. These are not large changes, but they matter. You pause briefly, looking out across the landscape. The light is soft now, the sun lower in the sky, casting long shadows that stretch across the ground. The world feels quieter, not empty, but settled. You take a slow breath, noticing how your body responds. The cold is still there, but it does not feel as sharp. The hunger still returns, but it does not surprise you. You have learned its rhythm. A lesser-known insight from evolutionary studies is that the human capacity for endurance is not only physical, but also psychological, allowing individuals to persist through repeated challenges without immediate reward. You begin to understand that endurance is not a single moment of strength. It is repetition, the ability to continue again and again. You walk forward, your steps aligned with the group. The rhythm feels natural now, something you no longer have to think about. Step, breath, step, breath. The pattern carries you. You glance at the others, noticing how each person moves with the same quiet consistency. There is no urgency, no hesitation, only continuation. You might reflect on how different this is from modern life, where many challenges are temporary and often resolved quickly. Here, there is no clear resolution, only ongoing effort. You feel the ground beneath you, firm and steady. The same ground that has challenged you also supports you. The same environment that tests you also allows you to survive. This balance becomes clearer now. You are not separate from it. You are part of it. You stop briefly near a small rise, looking back over the path you have taken. There is no visible trail, no clear mark of where you have been. The land does not remember your movement, but you do. You carry it with you, in your body, in your awareness, in your understanding of what to do next. There is ongoing discussion among researchers about how early humans developed such resilience over time, with some suggesting that repeated exposure to challenges strengthened both physical and cognitive responses. You turn forward again, continuing with the group. The horizon stretches ahead, as it always has, uncertain, open. You feel a quiet acceptance of that uncertainty now, not because it has changed, but because you have. You continue walking, your body steady, your mind calm. The challenges remain, they always will. Hunger will return, cold will press in, movement will continue, loss will occur, but so will adaptation, so will persistence, so will life. You notice how the fire is prepared again as the group begins to settle for the night. The same process repeats, careful and deliberate. Nothing is rushed, nothing is wasted. You sit near the flame, feeling its warmth once more. The light flickers across the ground, creating the same shifting patterns you have seen before. And yet, It feels slightly different now, more familiar. You hold your hands near the heat, the sensation steady and calming. The group settles around you, each person finding their place, the same structure, the same rhythm. You listen to the sounds of the fire, the quiet movements, the distant wind. Everything continues, and you remain within it. You begin to understand that the hardest part of being human 70,000 years ago is not any single challenge. It is all of them together, constant, unpredictable, unavoidable, and still. You continue. That is what defines this experience. Not perfection, not control, but persistence. You take a slow breath, feeling the air move through you. The night begins to settle once more, the light fading, the temperature dropping, the cycle repeats. You lie back carefully, the ground firm beneath you, the fire nearby. Your body rests, but your awareness remains soft, steady. You feel the presence of the group around you, the shared space, the shared experience. It is not comfort in the way you might know it, but it is something close, something enough. And as the darkness deepens, you allow your eyes to close, not fully, but enough. The fire continues to burn, the night continues to move, and you remain part of it. Now the pace slows even further. The fire beside you softens, its light becoming gentler, its movement quieter as the night deepens around you. The air cools gradually, settling into a steady stillness that feels almost calm. You notice how the sounds fade one by one. The distant movements become less distinct. The wind softens. Even your own breathing seems quieter now. You lie still, your body supported by the ground, your awareness drifting gently between wakefulness and rest. The challenges of the day remain, but they feel further away now, less immediate, less sharp. You feel the warmth of the fire reach you in soft waves, rising and falling, never constant, but always present. It is enough. You take a slow breath, letting it settle, and then another. The rhythm becomes steady, simple. You are here, in this moment. Nothing more is required. The land stretches beyond you, quiet and vast, unchanged by time or movement. The sky above, though unseen now, continues its slow shift, carrying the night forward. You do not need to follow it. You do not need to think about what comes next. For now, you rest. The fire dims slightly, its light softer, its presence more subtle. The group around you remains, each person within their own quiet space, connected by proximity, by shared experience, by the simple act of being here together. The world continues, but at a slower pace, a softer rhythm. You feel your body settle more fully, the tension easing, the awareness drifting, and as the night deepens, everything becomes quieter still, the fire, the air, your thoughts, until all that remains is a gentle stillness, a calm presence, a quiet end to the day, sweet dreams,